I would often find myself, I was 21, at midnight running down a dark street on my own with 10 big men chasing me.
Witness after witness has been telling the Leveson inquiry about their experiences of the dark arts of the press. But in tonight's report, a former undercover agent who was on the inside of one detective agency speaks for the first time about the lengths they were prepared to go to get a story.
Nothing was a barrier to them as regards gathering information. Actually boasted that we could get the Queen's medical records if we needed.
So far, most of the headlines have been about phone hacking. But police have recently told the MP Peter Hain private investigators tried to hack into his computers while he was Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. This programme reveals another victim who believes his security has also been compromised.
I've been told that my email addresses, at least 3 of them, have shown up on computers of people that were involved in hacking and have been hacked themselves.
And there are concerns many more victims could be identified. But rather than celebrities, they're more likely to be from within the worlds of politics and the security services.
People close to the investigation have told me that computer hacking could potentially dwarf the phone hacking scandal.
This week, the report tells the story so far of computer hacking and the press.
All right, this is a gate that leads to the alleyway that takes you down to the rear of the premises.
For nearly a decade, Joe Poulton, not his real name, had a ringside seat in the shabby world of buying and selling confidential information by private investigators.
If you were a visitor to those offices, it was always talk of what was going on with News International or the Mirror, selling stories to newspapers, and the means for getting that information wasn't exactly kosher, let's put it that way.
Stocky and now in his 60s, Joe Poulton, a former police officer, went undercover as a CHIS, a covert human intelligence source, in 1998. We've agreed to conceal his identity. His role was to gather information for the police about a firm called Southern Investigations and one of its directors, Jonathan Rees.
Opposite these social housing, terraced houses, is what it now appears to be an ordinary Edwardian terraced house. That was the premises of Southern Investigations, and that was the main power base. I should think the golden years of Southern Investigations when they expanded and started doing so much for the newspaper industry and media.
At the house in South London, where the business was based, he spoke publicly for the first time about what he'd witnessed.
The main driving force, the main brain behind it, was Rees, without a doubt, and certain police officers, some corrupt, that he'd befriended over the years. And he could see the possibilities that where newspapers once had asked him to do background investigation and story, he soon learnt that you could make the story and you could then go to the newspapers and say, this is what we've got, this is the information we've got, here's a big story, a big scandal. And the newspapers, to an extent, could divorce themselves, I suppose, from the source or the way that information was gathered. But then it just became enmeshed with each other, in my opinion anyway. They were both feeding off each other.
Joe Poulton originally went undercover to find out if Jonathan Rees had been involved in the murder of his business partner Daniel Morgan back in 1987. Rees has always denied responsibility, and a court case against him and 4 others collapsed earlier this year. Joe Poulton says he became a regular visitor at the offices of Southern Investigations, deliberately cultivating a close friendship with Rees. He recalls their claims that there were no limits to the information they could get access to.
Nothing was a barrier to them as regards gathering information. It was actually boasted that we could get the Queen's medical records if we needed. I should think there wasn't very few stories, if any, about 1%, that didn't involve some form of illicit mining of confidential information, a breach of the Data Protection Act. You know, every story would have to involve it. from getting doctors' records, medical records, hospital records, pension records, tax records. They bragged. They were so pleased. It was, like a feather in their cap. Nobody else can do it as well as we do.
Joe Poulton says Jonathan Rees developed a network of contacts, including former and serving police officers. He claims he paid them to help him get information that was then sold on, mainly to journalists. It was in the offices of Southern Investigations that he first found out that they were involved in commissioning computer hacking. Some of the hackers, he says, had learned the tricks of the trade while working for Army intelligence.
I was quite naive because I'd never heard of a keystroke virus until it was explained to me how you can put this on somebody's computer and sort of sit back on your own laptop sort of 150 miles away and watch exactly what they're doing on their computer. That side of it was obviously, again, that was contacts they had, contacts they cultivated, and equally there was lots of military people out there with those skills. And it's a sort of small world and they all get to know each other.
They may have hired those who'd previously worked in military intelligence to help them hack into computers, but Southern Investigations is unlikely to be the only firm of private investigators involved. This summer, the Metropolitan Police launched an investigation into computer hacking called Operation Tuleta. It's a smaller and so far less well-publicised offshoot of the phone hacking inquiry, Operation Wheating.
A small meeting in the room that we're sitting in now started to look at the extent of computer hacking. The police started by scoping, which is police jargon, to see how serious a matter it was, what evidence there was, and where it would go to.
The solicitor Mark Lewis is a familiar figure these days in his orange coat, in and out of court, representing the victims of phone hacking, including the family of the murdered schoolgirl Millie Dowler. He views the revelations about computer hacking as a new and disturbing chapter in this scandal.
It takes things onto a completely different level. Phone hacking, although it looked at people who were victims of crime, also looked to a great extent at people in the world of sports and celebrities, media, rather than military and politics. If they were looking in phone hacking at politics, it tended to be what they might be doing wrong in their private life, or what newspapers thought was wrong about their private life. Whereas in the information in computer hacking cases, I suppose they're not looking at the people, they're looking at the facts that those people knew.
Mark Lewis is representing a former military intelligence officer, Ian Hurst. He worked in Northern Ireland, recruiting and managing IRA agents. He contends that the private investigator Jonathan Rees arranged the hacking of his computer in 2006 and that the information was sent to the then executive editor of the News of the World in Ireland.
I believe that they requested the services of a private detective to place a Trojan virus on my computer and to then recover information that they felt was of interest to either them or their clients.
What proof do you have to back that up?
Well, in regards to the fact that there was a Trojan on my computer, that is a fact. The fact that the individual who placed the Trojan on my device has admitted that he did it for Mr. Rees, that is a fact. And that the police have written independently to both me and my wife and stated that information was unlawfully accessed from my computer.
Ian Hurst had in fact long since left Northern Ireland by 2006, but he was still in email contact with many of his former agents. Journalists were particularly interested in whether he was still corresponding with one of them, codenamed Steak Knife. He was a senior member of the IRA, but had been passing information to the British. Steak Knife fled Northern Ireland after his name was revealed in various newspaper articles. Ian Hurst believes the hackers wanted to find out his new address.
The information that they were ostensibly looking to recover would have been sensitive information. Clearly, that doesn't only impact me, it impacts on others that I were in contact with.
What do you mean?
Other people who are in police protective custody and in insensitive circumstances. There is evidence from information recovered from computers that other people that I were in contact with, they had documents which were stored on these hard drives, and there's evidence of other emails which don't directly impact on me. So clearly they've accessed them by some means.
Once a computer has been hacked, all emails received on it and the documents attached to them can be read by the hackers. Jane Winter was one of those in email contact with Ian Hirst during the 3 months he believes he was hacked. She's the director of British Irish Rights Watch, an independent organisation that's been monitoring human rights issues in Northern Ireland for the last 20 years.
There's a kind of ripple effect once somebody's computer is hacked, because I was sending Ian Hirst messages from me, but I was also sending attachments from a third party. So already that's 3 of us whose privacy has been compromised.
What did the officers from Operation Tuleta lead you to believe in terms of the scale of this?
Well, they did say that hundreds of people had been affected. I was under the impression that the scale was probably as big as the telephone hacking scandal.
Jane Winter says the police confirmed to her that the hackers made copies of highly sensitive information contained in her emails to Ian Hirst.
I was horrified because we work on the basis of confidentiality. The idea that anybody could be looking at really confidential documents that we have generated or sent on to our clients is very worrying indeed.
Did it potentially put people's lives at risk?
Well, in this case, yes, I think it did, because it was such sensitive material. That could have been very dangerous for those people. Indeed, it could even have been dangerous for me, that people would know that I knew their names.
Both Jane Winter and Ian Hirst have given evidence to the Leveson inquiry about computer hacking. The report asked Jonathan Rees to respond to the allegations made in this programme. He denied any wrongdoing and said in a statement,
"I've never sold or provided any information obtained through any illegal methods to any third party, including to any journalist. I've never unlawfully obtained any information from serving or former police officers about any ongoing criminal investigations."
Maracek was the name that constantly came up.
In a pub close to the former offices of Southern Investigations, Joe Poulton remembers Alex Maranchak. He was with the News of the World in the UK before becoming executive editor in Dublin. Joe Poulton says he was one of the firm's most regular customers.
He was a link man. At one stage, Jonathan Rees seemed to fall out with him. He lost favour with Jonathan Rees because I think Rees was complaining that they were owed thousands of pounds for work they'd done.
Did you meet Maracek?
I've met Alex Maracek on a few occasions.
Do you remember him and Jonathan Rees discussing any specific stories?
The talk, sort of swapping rumour and deciding what rumours and things could be built on which were worth following up. It was a very close relationship, and Rees said to me that Maracek relied upon them, how reliant they were on their output.
The report asked Alex Maranchak to respond to the allegations made in this programme. He also denied any wrongdoing and said in a statement,
"I have never attended a meeting which involved the instruction of a private investigator to illegally intercept private information. I have never instructed any third party to illegally intercept private information, nor have I procured any such instruction through any third party. To the best of my knowledge, I have never received any private information obtained through illegal means."
News International declined to comment on the allegations while police investigations continue. A civil action by Ian Hirst against Mr Rees, Mr Maranchak, the hacker and News International is expected to be heard at the end of next year. In a somewhat ironic twist of fate, Joe Poulton also believes he had his home computer hacked while he was befriending those at Southern Investigations. It blew his cover in 2006 and forced him to abandon his role gathering intelligence for the police.